smile like it's a joke," the alien waitress whispered, her voice shaking. "There's a red dot on your head right now." Jordan Lane jumped at the words, his eyes darting around wildly in search of any sign of danger he could see. He didn't notice anything unusual except for an unsettling chill running down his spine. The neon lights above flickered intermittently as they cast a harsh glare over everything and everyone inside the Crimson Comet Cantina. Surin Talca leaned closer, her large golden eyes staring into Jordan's with an intense urgency that made him feel exposed, like he was standing barefoot in the middle of a minefield. Her voice barely reached his ears above the cacophony of music blaring from the speakers and the din of conversations around them. Jordan looked up at Surin, who had to be no more than 5 feet tall but exuded an ethereal presence with her iridescent pink skin that seemed almost otherworldly. Her form was delicate yet curvaceous under a worn-out uniform skirt revealing pale thighs and silky strands of hair framing her face. "What do you mean?" Jordan managed to choke out, trying his best not to betray the panic welling up inside him. "There's a red dot on your head," Surin repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Right now." She swallowed hard and took another step closer until she was practically leaning over him. "If you run, you die," she added quickly. "If you look, you die. Just smile, please." Jordan's heart pounded so loudly in his chest that he half expected her to hear it too. He forced himself into a smile, though it came out more like a grimace given the circumstances. "Sniper drone, sir," and continued softly but urgently. "Above the bar somewhere. It's tracking you." She looked down at him with eyes brimming with tears and swallowed again before adding hesitantly, "Because I'm the one who marked you." Jordan felt his blood run cold, despite the humidity thickening around them like a fog. "Your boss?" he ventured cautiously, not daring to look up for fear of moving too much. "What's your boss got against tourists?" Her eyes were wide and wet now as she stared back at him earnestly. "He targets you guys, sir," and admitted with a slight tremor in her voice, "for labor contracts." She paused momentarily before confessing something even more personal. I can't let them take another good person." Her gaze softened for just an instant, as if searching his face or soul. Jordan's smile widened slightly, though he knew it was still a forced expression. "What's your name?" "Surin," she replied softly, her voice barely above the music anymore. "Surin Talca." There was an unspoken plea in those words, a wish that perhaps, if Jordan knew who she truly was beyond this moment of shared peril, he might understand better why it mattered so much. "Okay, Surin." Jordan nodded grimly through his forced smile. "What do we do?" She seemed relieved by the question and took a deep breath. "I'm going to spill drinks on you." Her voice broke slightly, but she recovered quickly enough it'll block the drone's view for 3 seconds. She paused, looking at him intently before adding resolutely, "When I say now, you follow me." Jordan nodded again, though he shook his head as well. "No." Surin blinked in surprise, then nodded back solemnly. "Good," she said simply. "Now." Surin shouted suddenly, grabbing the nearest tray of glasses and dumping them over Jordan's lap with a crash that drowned out everything else momentarily. Glass shattered against concrete, while liquid poured all around him. Sudden noise was enough to mask any sounds or movements he made as well. Jordan felt wetness spreading across his pants, but ignored it completely. He knew better than to question her plan, simply followed orders, scrambling up from the seat and sprinting towards Surin without hesitation. Surin darted sideways with him in tow, weaving through tables scattered haphazardly throughout the dimly lit establishment, filled now only by confused patrons staring as drinks spilled left and right. Their movements were quick, but calculated. They needed to find cover fast if Jordan wanted any hope of escaping alive today from this place where outlaws rule. Together, Surin and Jordan moved like shadows among the chaos they'd created. Their breaths mingled in the air above them, though neither dared speak another word as adrenaline coursed through their veins. They slipped behind a makeshift counter at one corner near storage shelves that blocked most of the view from outside eyes, while also shielding themselves temporarily from whatever lurked beyond. Once there, both stopped dead still and waited for any signs of pursuit or detection, but nothing came. No alarms sounding nor gunshots fired back into them. Only after several tense moments passed did they breathe a collective sigh of relief before slowly peeking out to assess the situation further outside their hiding spot amidst all these strangers caught up in Kyreth's dark underbelly. A&D drinks crash. Jordan runs. The red dot follows, then loses them in the chaos. Surin's hand was cold, trembling slightly as she gripped Jordan's arm tightly and pulled him away from their hiding spot behind a counter littered with broken glasses and puddles of spilled drinks. Her eyes were wide with fear, but also determination, darting nervously around them before fixing on the entrance to the cantina kitchen just beyond another set of tables. "Come," she whispered urgently. Jordan hesitated for only a fraction of a second, his heart racing as he caught up to her quick pace through the dimly lit room filled with patrons staring in shock at the sudden commotion they'd created. They moved swiftly and silently towards the kitchen doorway, where Sir and paused briefly before pushing it open just enough to slip inside. The kitchen was bustling despite its small size. Tall aliens in white uniforms rushed about behind a long counter piled high with plates and dishes. Smaller machines whirred loudly beside them as they prepared meals for customers who likely had no clue how close their orders were being made under threat. Despite the chaos, Sir seemed to know exactly where she was going, her gaze flicking left, then right down narrow rows of food prep stations before settling on a corner near large stainless steel fridges and industrial ovens. "Kitchen staff won't bother us, Sir," and murmured over her shoulder as they hurried past busy cooks without drawing any attention. "They are too worried about the regulars." She nodded towards a narrow passageway leading further into the back of the establishment, where there was less activity going on compared to main areas closer to customers. Jordan's breath hitched in his throat, but he followed closely behind Surin as she guided him through this maze-like environment. Each step felt like another beat of his heart, every sound amplified by adrenaline coursing through his veins, the clatter of pots and pans, muffled shouts from elsewhere within the building, heavy footsteps approaching closer with every second that passed. "SSH, Sir," he cautioned when they reached yet another doorway near an industrial dishwasher unit. She peered out cautiously, then pulled Jordan in close beside her again as she pointed toward a small metal door set into one wall away from immediate sight of busy kitchen workers moving between tables and counters nearby. Through there, Jordan's mind raced. This was clearly some kind of emergency exit or storage room, but he barely had time to wonder before Sir pushed him ahead gently towards the hidden entrance she indicated so quickly. "This way," she insisted firmly yet softly through clenched teeth as they both ducked inside. The space beyond opened up briefly into a narrow corridor lined with shelving units full of cleaning supplies and various other items needed for kitchen operations. But it wasn't long until Sir led him onto an even smaller passageway connecting several utility areas together. "We're almost there," she said breathlessly as they hurried along another twisty path. "But the real question is, where are we going?" Jordan's heart pounded in his chest. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to run harder, faster, to put more distance between them and whatever danger might be lurking behind each corner around which they turned deeper into this network of back passages, leading away from immediate threats, but also potentially straight toward even greater peril. He trusted Surin's instincts, though somehow sensing that she knew what needed doing far better than he ever could. "We're going to the port," Surin explained, her voice steady despite obvious signs of fear and anxiety clouding every word she spoke now. "If we can reach a ship before Kravix locks down the moon." She paused suddenly, then added sharply, as if remembering something crucial, "Kravix will collapse the tunnels." Jordan nodded grimly, but said nothing. He knew that any momentary hesitation could prove disastrous under such circumstances, so instead, his actions spoke louder than words. He grabbed Surin's hand tightly and urged her onward. They emerged into a larger maintenance tunnel shortly after, walls lined with glowing green pipes, dripping condensation here and there, while neon blue lights flickered sporadically overhead, casting eerie shadows across the floor beneath their feet. "Listen," Surin instructed sharply, then held up a finger to signal him quiet as she paused beside a corner where steam pipes snaked through narrow pathways, crisscrossing in every direction. Jordan bit back an involuntary sigh, but complied obediently, straining his ears for any sounds that might indicate pursuit, yet finding nothing, just the faint hum of distant machinery and occasional drip drops from overhead plumbing adding to ambient noise levels within these underground corridors. "Safe," Surin whispered after a moment, then began moving forward again. Another turn brought them closer still towards some sort of central hub where several tunnels intersected. Here, light seemed dimmer somehow, air cooler too, it also no less tense or full of potential dangers lurking unseen in darkened corners around every bend. Steam hissed through pipes overhead, and water dripped steadily down walls as they progressed further onwards together. "Are you sure about this?" Jordan asked abruptly, after several more twists finally led them to yet another hidden doorway tucked behind a large metal grate, partially blocking view from outside eyes peering inward, but not vice versa due to small aperture size. "You seem, I don't know, familiar with these places." Surin hesitated only briefly before nodding slowly, then squeezing his hand reassuringly in response. "Yes, I've escaped many times already using secret exits like this one." She paused again, her expression softening slightly, as if seeing something beyond current situation each time fails. "But maybe today." Her voice trailed off into silence, leaving Jordan to wonder what exactly that meant. Nevertheless, he pushed such thoughts aside in favor of focusing on immediate task at hand, escaping before it became too late. He nodded back firmly, then stepped up beside her. "This way," she said determinedly, pushing open the grate and slipping through first despite how tight space felt, with even minor maneuvering required due to its narrow dimensions, plus numerous obstacles inside like pipes poking out sideways, making passage difficult without proper clearance or practice navigating such confined areas efficiently under duress conditions. Jordan followed closely behind, squeezing himself past awkwardly through small opening until he too was safely on other side where Surin stood waiting silently for him back in relative darkness beyond grate's confines. "Now," she whispered sharply, then took off running down another tunnel passage leading away from central area towards some unknown destination lying ahead. Jordan hesitated again, but only momentarily. His survival instincts kicked in as soon as he heard distant shouts and heavy footsteps approaching closer still, likely security personnel now closing in on their location back near main entrance where commotion had started earlier. He didn't dare look behind, to confirm suspicions, instead simply follow Surin's lead further onwards. They ran down twisting corridors lined with pipes and conduits glinting eerily under dim neon lights overhead. Air grew cooler still here as they progressed deeper underground towards what seemed like Heart of Moon's complex network connecting various zones together. "Where are we going?" Jordan asked again, though mostly to reassure himself, now rather than out of genuine curiosity or need for further explanation from Surin. "Port," she replied tersely through ragged breaths, no longer able to maintain previous steady pace, given how rapidly events were unfolding around them, with every second counting towards inevitable confrontation looming ahead. "Chip, leave Moon." Her words struck home forcefully within Jordan's mind. Each mile seemed crucially important now, despite how far they'd already come together under pressure of imminent danger closing in from all sides simultaneously. Suddenly, an explosion echoed somewhere nearby, shattering glass and sending debris flying through air. The ground beneath their feet shook violently, then subsided gradually into eerie stillness immediately afterwards, leaving only ringing silence lingering afterward, as aftershock continued to reverberate throughout interconnected tunnel system surrounding them now. Surin stumbled, but caught herself quickly, eyes darting wildly around in search of safest route forward before she finally spotted what looked like exit point, a headlight glowing faintly from beyond another bend further down darkened passageway they were currently moving through. "Move," she ordered sharply, then took off sprinting once more, pulling Jordan along behind her without stopping until they reached final turn leading straight towards that elusive glimmer of hope shining dimly in distance. "Kravik's men are coming," Surin warned breathlessly as they raced forward side by side, her voice barely above whisper, but unmistakably urgent nonetheless. "He wants me dead before letting go." Jordan nodded grimly, understanding fully now how high-stakes situation had become since their chance encounter inside Cantina Kitchen just hours ago, which led them both into this desperate struggle for survival against overwhelming odds. Without another word, he grabbed her hand once more and urged Sir, and onward towards distant light ahead, their only hope of escape lying not far beyond next turn in tunnels, maze-like layout stretching out endlessly around corners, leading either toward freedom or back toward certain doom awaiting them just a short distance away now. Jordan and Surin collapsed behind a stack of shipping crates, gasping for breath as they lay hidden in the shadows. Above them, Kravik's drones swept over their heads, red lights scanning Methodika. Ellie, along the dimly lit corridor. "Safer now." "Why did he mark me?" Jordan whispered harshly, his eyes wide with fear and confusion. "I'm nobody. I have nothing." Surin hugged her knees tightly to her chest, looking up at him with huge golden eyes that shimmered like liquid gold in the flickering light of a nearby lamp. She shivered slightly, but spoke softly, almost tenderly. "That's exactly why." Jordan's heart clenched as he realized what Surin meant. "Kravik's runs a debt labor operation," she explained further. "He targets tourists who won't be missed, backpackers, wanderers, people traveling alone. He marks them, then his men rescue them from some manufactured danger." Jordan's jaw tightened as he tried to process the information. "The tourist is grateful," he continued for her, his voice shaking slightly, but with a hint of anger now seeping in. "Kravix offers them work to pay off their rescue." Surin nodded solemnly, her golden eyes reflecting the sorrow and bitterness she felt deep within herself. She pulled out a small communicator from behind one crate and checked it quickly before turning back towards Jordan with grim determination on her delicate features. "Except that never ends," she said softly but firmly. "I've seen people spend decades here, If you hadn't been warned, I'd have spent the rest of my life in his factories." Jordan's eyes widened at this revelation. A shiver ran down his spine thinking about what that would mean for Surin and countless others like her. "Jesus," Jordan muttered to himself as he reached out and rubbed his stubbled chin nervously. He glanced back towards where the drones still patrolled, their red lights now sweeping closer, but not yet spotting them amidst the shadows of these shipping crates. "And you work for him?" His voice was barely a whisper in disbelief mixed with horror at this new reality she just revealed to him. Surin's expression softened further as she looked away from his questioning gaze and stared down at her hands resting between her knees, shimmering slightly in the low light. "I'm owned by him, sir," and replied quietly but resolutely. She held up one delicate wrist towards Jordan, where a small brand mark glowed faintly against her iridescent skin, a reminder of how long she'd been trapped here under Kravik's control. Jordan felt an involuntary shudder run through his body as he took in the sight before him. It was almost like looking at a prisoner's ID number or slave collar on Surin's wrist. It made what she'd said about her situation all too real now. Silence fell between them for several long moments, both of them absorbing this new reality, horror and cruelty of Kravik's operation being starkly laid bare before Jordan through Surin's own personal experience as one of its victims. Then, without a moment's hesitation, he looked back at her with determination etched into his features. "I'm going to help you," he said firmly but gently. His hand reached out towards hers hesitantly and took it in both of his, a gesture meant to convey solidarity more than anything else under these dire circumstances. "You risked your life to warn me." He squeezed her hand slightly, holding on to the fragile connection between them despite everything around him threatening to tear apart their fragile bond. "That's enough." She stared at him for a long moment in shock before those huge golden eyes softened even further, and she nodded slowly. Tears welled up, but didn't spill over yet. There was something else shining brightly within her gaze, a spark of hope. Surin swallowed hard, trying to find the words to express everything that Jordan's offer meant to her after so many years trapped beneath Kravik's thumb with no chance at freedom in sight until this moment. "You don't even know me," but Jordan cut her off gently yet firmly. Again, no one should be property. His eyes were steady on hers as he spoke, the conviction behind his words resonating deeply within Surin's heart now. "We're leaving this moon together," he reiterated with unwavering resolve in both tone and expression. He pulled out a small device from another pocket of his Dakathi's own communicator and checked it briefly to ensure they had some semblance of safety for the time being before looking back at her once more. For several heartbeats, Surin just stared up at him, then she was suddenly crying again, but this time there was something different about those tears. The way they fell down her delicate face now seemed almost like a release after all these years trapped in this hellish existence. She looked directly back into Jordan's determined gaze and saw the sincerity behind his words. "Hope," she whispered to herself as much as him, feeling it building inside of her for what felt like the first time since arriving on Kyreth so long ago. "Together," she repeated softly, but with newfound clarity now guiding their path forward through this nightmare moon's dark corridors and beyond. Jordan nodded without hesitation. "Together," he agreed. "Soul, Manel, why?" Then pulled Sir, and up from behind those crates together they moved swiftly onwards towards that glimmering light seen earlier, their only chance at escape from Kravik's grasp lying not far ahead now in the distance. "A&D together?" she whispered. "Together." Jordan's heart pounded as he and Sir crept through the labyrinthine corridors of the Syndicate fortress, each step bringing them closer to freedom or at least a chance for escape. The spaceport was tantalizingly close, no just around the corner, perhaps 100 meters away, but their path ahead suddenly transformed into an obstacle course when two shuttles descended in front of them with a roar. Kravik's personal ship had arrived at a sleek black vessel that screamed power and malice from its every surface. Elite guards clad in impenetrable armor poured out, forming a tight perimeter around the area where Jordan and Sir and were now trapped like cornered animals. But it was when sniper drones began to circle above them, their deadly optics scanning for any movement or threat, that panic truly set in. "We have no choice," Jordan said grimly, his hand squeezing Surin's, as if holding on to the last shred of hope they shared together. "We need a plan." Surin bit her lip nervously but nodded. "Back to the rooftop," Jordan whispered urgently, pulling Sir in along as he veered them back towards an upper level. The noise of approaching footsteps and mechanical whirring grew louder with each second that passed. "We can't, there's no way out from up there," Surin hissed back anxiously, her iridescent skin reflecting the flickering lights in hues of fear and desperation. "Just keep moving," Jordan urged, leading them through a narrow passageway. "We'll find another exit." But fate had other plans for them. Night plans that came down from the night sky itself with Kravik's imposing figure at their forefront. The Syndicate boss emerged from his shuttle like an apparition of terror made flesh and metal, half his face replaced by glowing cybernetic implants, casting ominous glows across everything around him. "Little Surin," he greeted in a voice dripping with false affection, as if they were old acquaintances rather than captor and captive. "Did you really think you could leave me?" His eyes then found Jordan standing behind her protectively, his camera poised like some sort of makeshift weapon, but offering no real defense against the firepower surrounding them. "And you brought a friend," Kravix observed with an amused smirk, curling those lipless maws into something sinister. "How sweet!" Surin stepped forward bravely despite trembling visibly from head to toe. She stood firmly between Jordan and danger, her own fragile form offering no real physical protection, but more of a moral shield against the harsh realities she faced daily under Kravix's tyranny. "You won't take him," she declared with surprising strength for one so small yet carrying such heavy burdens within herself. Kravix laughed at this defiance, however, his tone mocking and chilling all at once. "I already own you, girl," he sneered, gesturing dismissively towards the guards closing in on them now from behind his back. "Now I own him too, unless—" The criminal mastermind's eyes gleamed with sick pleasure as they lingered over Jordan's body language, ready for any kind of move or resistance. Jordan felt a cold sweat break out across his brow. Despite all efforts to remain composed, he knew exactly what was coming next. "Kill the human," Kravix ordered cruelly, waving one gauntleted hand towards his subordinates. "Let her watch." Surin's breath caught in throat, and Jordan could feel the tremor of fear running through her slender frame as those cold steel weapons began to level with him. "Wait," he tried interrupting, but found himself staring down barrels already aimed for his destruction before a word was spoken more than an order had been given. There were no second chances here, only survival instinct kicking into overdrive now. His mind raced through all possibilities of every potential escape route or weapon that lay within reach, but nothing seemed to compare against the sheer firepower of Kravix's men, and certainly not enough time left before they opened fire on him without hesitation once ordered again by their boss. However, Jordan had brought one unexpected piece into this deadly game, a device far more benign than lethal in its intended purpose, yet could still hold potential for disruption amidst chaos. His camera, the same lens he usually used to capture beauty and wonder across galaxies now became his only chance at turning the tide against impossible odds stacked against them both. "Trust me," Jordan whispered urgently to Surin, taking another step forward despite knowing it was almost certain death awaiting him just feet away ahead in this moment. He pulled out a small device from yet another pocket, a tool he kept on hand always for such unpredictable circumstances like these back alley planets often provided him. YTH. She stared at him blankly, still trying to comprehend the sudden turn of events and how she might be able to help or even live through what was about to unfold now. Her eyes pleaded silently, but Jordan just squeezed her hands reassuringly before moving away slightly, his body language communicating silent instructions as much as words ever could between them. "Hey!" he shouted out suddenly, above all else grabbing everyone's attention back towards him instead of their original target, the guards with weapons already aimed and ready to fire at his command. "I have something you might want," he lied smoothly, pointing once again towards the camera hanging around his neck, now fully within range for anyone watching closely enough. "Want a picture?" Kravix frowned, momentarily confused by this unexpected turn, but before any clear order could form in those cybernetic circuits, Jordan fired off an intense burst of flash from his low-light photography device. The sudden brilliance was blinding even to human eyes, and overwhelmed completely the sensors designed for precise targeting employed on Kravix drones. Their optics overloaded, sending them spinning wildly out of control as they began firing at random now amidst this disarray. "Go!" Jordan yelled, grabbing Surin with surprising strength under his arm and shoving her towards where he knew the chaos was likely providing a temporary window to flee through unobserved, yet still keeping himself between danger and friend, even when she protested wildly against such risky maneuvering that endangered him further just for her sake alone. Surin threw herself at Kravix, instead taking what chance there might be now with brute force shoving the larger male off balance, while guards scattered from their malfunctioning comrades amidst this sudden whirlwind of confusion and noise. She used every ounce of her strength to push through, knowing she had maybe just seconds before renewed violence descended upon them once more. An explosion rocked part of rooftop where they were standing. Debris flew everywhere as Jordan grabbed Sir, and again pulling her along now with him through the mayhem left behind, a single chance at escape now forming right in front of them both. Suddenly, on a passing cargo platform whizzing past lower stories within fortress grounds, just barely out reach, but there for taking if quick enough. "Run!" he shouted without another word, guiding her swiftly onto surface, even as more blasts echoed around them, confirming their window closed almost immediately after this daring move. They could hear shouts and gunfire chasing behind, but no sight of pursuers yet visible, at least not from vantage point atop cargo craft now rushing away from danger towards horizon beyond. Jordan looked back only once to confirm that Sir and was still with him. She clung tightly, her face a mask of shock and relief. The wind rushed past them as the platform sped on toward freedom. Behind them, flames began to lick at parts of Kravix's fortress where chaos had reignited amidst the sudden turn in events. "Hope," Surin whispered again to herself, but now with genuine belief rather than despair echoing before it was clear she felt her own path forward beginning here and now, even as their flight into uncertain future continued unbroken, still away from Kairat's grip, finally slipping free at last. Jordan clutched Surin tightly, feeling her body trembling beneath his arm as they barreled through the smoke and debris that littered their path from Kravix fortress to the spaceport entrance. A stray shot had grazed her side during the chaos, just a graze, but it was enough for her delicate skin to start flickering in alarm. "Stay with me," he urged, his voice hoarse yet desperate as she leaned heavily on him. "We're almost there." Surin's iridescent skin flickered brighter, then dimmed again with each step they took. Her huge golden eyes were wide and full of fear, but also a fierce determination that didn't waver even in the face of such peril. "I can't pass the gates," she whispered, her breath shallow as it mingled with his own rapid intake for oxygen around them. The brand Jordan's grip tightened on her arm slightly to steady himself and reassure her at once. "Then we find another way." They navigated through a labyrinth of fallen drones and panicked bystanders, the spaceport in pandemonium after news had spread about the malfunctioning aerial units firing randomly across Kyreth's moon. Kravik's people were distracted by fires and managing damage control while trying to contain their own chaos. Over there, Jordan pointed towards a narrow passage leading behind one of the main terminals where maintenance workers moved in and out with supplies. No guards present at all. It was a risky move, but one they needed if escape from Kyreth's grip held any chance. He led Sir in quickly to the entrance manned by two technicians who glanced up curiously when their usual brisk workflow suddenly included visitors dressed for travel rather than repair work. "Sir, Mom," one of them called out hesitantly as Jordan approached with his arms still wrapped around her waist, moving swiftly but carefully. "I'm sorry," he said smoothly, flashing a quick grin that wasn't entirely convincing through the panic lingering in his eyes, though it seemed to do enough here where these workers weren't used to such visitors. "We took a wrong turn somewhere and wound up over by the loading dock instead of our terminal. Could you point us towards departure?" The second technician nodded, eyeing their travel gear with an almost fond smile that faded when Jordan handed him some local currency, more than enough to make up for any inconvenience this detour might cause. "Sure thing," he said briskly, as if it were everyday work now guiding tourists around rather than fixing machinery. "Thanks," Jordan called over his shoulder, pushing Sir and onward with an encouraging smile, even though she was visibly wilting by the second and almost limp against him now. The spaceport beyond was a blur of activity still, but somehow they managed to make it inside once more into what should have been calm terminals, instead finding them packed densely with citizens staring towards massive screens broadcasting live feeds from across Kyreth's moon. Word had spread like wildfire about the rooftop incident, early Earth drone malfunction, Kravik's people shooting into crowds rather than containing damage. It was enough to turn even loyal followers against him as more details filtered out through every channel available now, showing exactly what this syndicate really did beneath its carefully constructed facade of protection and order. Surin pointed weakly at a group of guards positioned near the gate where passengers waited anxiously, some eyeing them with suspicion already while others appeared relieved just to see someone else in similar predicament. "Kravik's men," she whispered urgently as they paused for breath beside an emergency exit door leading into crowded passages. Jordan nodded grimly. There were more of Kravik's enforcers guarding each terminal entrance now than ever before. Then something caught his eye on a screen nearby, footage from the earlier rooftop battle flashing over and again with fresh details every time it cycled. The drone's malfunction had been catastrophic, but perhaps not completely random. After all, those aerial units were part of Kravik's arsenal to maintain control, now turned against its own people. Citizens gathered around Jordan and Sir, and suddenly noticed the images, too outrage spread across their faces as they watched this latest evidence unfold. The syndicate was no longer hiding behind pretenses, but attacking open, lay a stark reality that had never before been so apparent or accepted widely enough to matter until now. "Get ready," Jordan whispered back quietly, helping her down one last time into a crouch near the exit door while he himself straightened up and approached guards casually. "There's another way out." She nodded weakly in agreement as he stepped forward confidently despite feeling anything but certain of success at this point. But it worked better than expected, perhaps because these men were so preoccupied with crowd control now that any distraction seemed welcome indeed. "Excuse me," Jordan said politely to the nearest guard, catching his eye and flashing a smile that might have been charming under other circumstances. "My friend here needs medical attention immediately before this place gets completely out of hand. You know what I mean." He pointed towards Sir, and still hidden in shadows beside door frame now. Guard nodded automatically, first glancing down, then back at Jordan, eyes widening slightly as he finally processed the meaning behind those words, especially when a low murmur started rising from crowd forming around them. People weren't just watching anymore. They were reacting again, not in Kravik's favor, but rather turning on him instead, with every passing moment. Jordan smiled wider at this man, now knowing full well how far out of their comfort zone these guards suddenly found themselves, caught between desperate civilians and an already crumbling order maintained solely through fear. "Please," he implored gently yet firmly, leaning close so only guard could hear his next words clearly above noise from surrounding groups beginning to chant angrily together. Guard glanced again at Sir, and who had slipped further into shadows by now, her iridescent skin almost blending with dim light reflecting off metal surfaces here, and then finally hesitated for just a moment too long before nodding reluctantly and stepping aside without another word, while Jordan caught hold of her hand, urgently pulling them both away towards exit instead. "No questions asked," he added quietly, ensuring Sir understood what this meant clearly, in her eyes still full of uncertainty despite everything already happening around them. "Just follow me." They reached the emergency door just as it opened on a technician who looked equally surprised to see two strangers appearing out from shadows here, but let Jordan pass through first with Sir in close behind before quickly closing again after. Silence reigned momentarily within small maintenance corridor, then broken only by their quickened breathing and soft footsteps moving down length of passage towards distant cargo entrance seen earlier. "Almost there," Jordan murmured to himself as he led her onwards, now relief tingling in his veins alongside adrenaline still buzzing wildly beneath skin, knowing just how close they'd come yet again with each step, but equally sure that today's narrow escape might finally mean freedom for them both, if only they could make it through these final few hundred meters. Surin was crying silently beside him, her eyes fixed on the distant door where light filtered in from beyond. "Why are they helping?" she asked softly, a question born of confusion and gratitude at once, as much pain. Jordan smiled back at her this time with genuine warmth filling his expression, rather than mere charm needed for distractions before. "Because you're not the only one who was tired of him," he explained quietly but surely, meaning more here than just herself, or even this syndicate's hold over Kyreth Moon. Every single person involved had reached breaking point somehow, and today marked its moment finally. They emerged into open areas soon enough, where large cargo ships docked for loading purposes before departure. No guards in sight, only a handful of workers moving crates from one side to another while paying little attention elsewhere amidst their own tasks, focused narrowly ahead on mundane jobs needing done now rather than strange tourists suddenly appearing here without explanation or expectation attached. "Here," Jordan said, pulling out emergency beacon had managed to acquire earlier somehow, and pressing it firmly against wall near entrance point where signal could easily broadcast outward into nearby areas beyond monitored range of fortress itself back inside city limits. Lights blinked once then twice before stabilizing with green glow, now visible even from short distance, indicating successful transmission. He stepped quickly towards nearest ship, small but functional for what needed doing, small enough to fit two people still standing upright without issue, while large enough to reach escape velocity if necessary given current fuel reserves reported as part of beacon's secondary functions. "Get inside," he instructed her gently, then, "Helping, sir," and onto cargo deck, even though she was shaking now uncontrollably despite having escaped immediate danger only moments ago. She obeyed numbly, climbing aboard with Jordan right behind before securing entry hatch closed firmly against potential pursuit from either direction, inside or out, where they knew no longer needed fear such interference, as brand on her wrist began to flicker, then dim entirely shortly thereafter as contract files burned back inside Fortress itself amidst this sudden collapse of order now spreading rapidly beyond anyone's control yet. Surin looked down at her wrist in disbelief, the fading mark a stark reminder of freedom regained and chains finally broken. She turned wide eyes towards Jordan, who merely offered another reassuring smile, this time with absolute certainty written across his face that they'd won through against all odds here today, despite whatever challenges might come next still lying ahead. "We did it," she whispered again to herself, but now without despair or disbelief coloring words, instead genuine belief shining brightly within her heart. At last, path forward truly had begun here, and now, amidst this chaos, finally slipping free from Kairat's grasp at long last, just as Jordan Lane himself seemed equally ready for whatever might come next, already planned accordingly far in advance. And so, with one final glance back towards horizon, where chaos still roiled beneath moonlight beyond, they turned their faces together fully forward into uncertain future that awaited them both, but now free to make choices entirely on own terms again. A&D Jordan Lane and Surin Taka stood on the boarding ramp of a small, utilitarian shuttle that would take them away from Kairath Moon. The ship was nothing fancy, basic seats bolted to the floor, recycled air recycling itself into an endless cycle of stale breaths, destinations marked with blinking lights far beyond the oppressive clutches of this moon's surface. Jordan had already bought 2 tickets using his last remaining credits, knowing that every second counted in their narrow window for escape. "Ready?" he asked Surin without looking back at her, instead keeping a firm grip on both tickets and himself, as if holding on to hope itself by the neck. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes were fixed on the ship, like it was some kind of monster about to consume them whole. "I've never left this moon," she whispered finally, voice barely audible above the hum of Mach and Uri starting up around them. "Never been on a ship before. Never seen anywhere else." She wrapped her arms protectively over herself, drawing closer into a tight ball against the cold metal floor beneath their feet. Jordan turned to face her, meeting those wide eyes with as much warmth and conviction as he could muster under these circumstances. "It's okay," he said gently but firmly. "We'll take it slow, one step at a time." Surin's gaze flickered between him and the looming ship behind them, uncertainty carving deep lines into her delicate face. "What if it's worse out there?" she questioned, voice trembling just slightly with fear of what lay beyond their current world. "What if no one wants me? What if I'm broken or used up?" Jordan stepped closer, placing a hand under Surin's chin and tilting her head upwards so that they were eye to eye again. Her golden eyes locked onto his as he spoke earnestly. "Surin," Jordan began softly but resolutely, squeezing gently at the back of her hands, where their fingers intertwined now tightly in mutual support. "You saved my life today. You risked everything and defied orders because you couldn't just stand by while someone else suffered. That took incredible courage." She blinked away, tears threatening to spill down those delicate cheeks as she searched his face for something that mirrored back her own hope. "I know I've never been brave, sir," and admitted quietly, voice wavering, but holding steady beneath Jordan's gaze of unflinching belief in her strength. "I just couldn't let them hurt you." Jordan nodded affirmatively, then pulled both their hands up close to his chest, pressing a kiss lightly onto the knuckles before letting go again with an encouraging smile. "You're not broken," he reassured her once more, voice dripping sincerity like honey on toast. "Not even for a second. You did what needed doing today because your conscience wouldn't let you do anything else." Surin's eyes searched his face intently, then before answering him back softly, but with newfound determination. "You don't know me, really," she admitted, testing the weight of that truth on her tongue. Jordan returned that honesty right away without hesitation or pause, and stride towards their uncertain future together, now set firmly into place by these very words shared between them so honestly and openly here and now. "I know you saved me." "That's enough for now," Jordan agreed readily with a sincere nod, meeting those large golden eyes once more squarely on the spot where truth meets belief. "We'll figure out everything else as we go along together." He let his last statement hang in the air between them before adding one final piece to set things irrevocably into motion, despite all uncertainties still looming ahead. "First time for both of us." Surin laughed wetly and shakily then, but it was a real laugh, nonetheless a precious thing indeed after so long trapped amidst lies and fear. It warmed her whole being through from head to toe in ways even the cold chill of Kyreth's winds couldn't penetrate now. "First time," she echoed back to him with renewed vigor, as if affirming this unbreakable bond forged here today between them, two strangers thrown together by fate amidst chaos, but determined nonetheless not to let go or give up hope yet when given such rare opportunity for freedom and new chance at life itself, so long denied both of them. She took Jordan's hand again then, the first time she had ever done something like this, without feeling like a criminal in need of escape rather than someone truly free. Together they stepped onto the ramp leading inside their salvation ship, now waiting patiently, with open doors beckoning onwards towards whatever destiny awaited beyond mere confines of Kyreth Moon. Jordan helped Sir in aboard gently, then closed the hatch behind him, firmly securing them both away from prying eyes or threats lurking unseen within shadowy corners, awaiting opportunity to pounce. The ship hummed to life around them as they settled into their seats amidst an aura of cautious hope and uncertain anticipation now permeating every breath taken together. Through the window, Kyreth Moon began shrinking, its neon-lit prison landscape slowly fading away beneath moonlight sky that would soon become nothing more than a painful memory rather than present reality. And a more for these two escaping refugees. "Where do you want to go?" Jordan asked Surin, without missing beat now that momentous steps taken had finally cleared immediate path forward towards actual freedom, and new beginnings laid ahead waiting somewhere out there beyond. She turned wide eyes back towards him then, face glowing softly in dim lighting of shuttle's interior, or space, as if caught entirely off guard by such profound invitation being extended to her, so suddenly yet naturally here, amidst all chaos, just hours ago, still felt like mere moments passed despite everything that had transpired since their initial meeting at Red Orbit Syndicate's bar. Anywhere you are," she answered finally, voice filled with quiet resolve born of trust in this stranger who showed up unexpectedly one night, only to become unlikely savior and steadfast friend, now willing to share uncharted future together, starting here precisely now amidst uncertain path ahead stretching out before them both equally unwritten, but hopefully hopeful nonetheless. And as those last moments slipped away into darkness beyond shuttle's confines, Jordan Lane took Sir Antaka's hand once more with a reassuring squeeze, just like he promised earlier this time, not letting go until their destination finally arrived, bringing new world awaiting exploration and discovery within its embrace, rather than chains or fear waiting to ensnare again. The ship jumped into hyperspace then, leaving behind only the echoes of past struggles, one against all odds. Two refugees now freed from prison moons hold, one photographer seeking adventure amidst starscape beyond borders of known worlds explored already by others before them, but never quite like this unique journey set forth today, with hearts still beating strongly, even amidst cold emptiness stretching endless in every direction. Two souls bound together through acts of courage and mutual trust, each ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing they wouldn't be alone anymore. The galaxy waited for them now, full of promise and uncertainty alike, but with their hearts set firmly forward amidst this new chapter truly opening up before eyes wide awake, finally seeing possibilities beyond what once seemed impossible, even within grasp at last. The ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving Kyreth Moon behind forevermore in its wake. Jordan Lane looked out the window one final time, then turned back towards Sir Antaka with a smile on his face that matched hers, a look of wonder and hope amidst uncertainty stretching endlessly before them, yet now embraced fully by both hearts, intertwined tightly within bond forged through fire of adversity, overcome together finally, after long awaited for moment arrived at last.